the fact that because they've played such an integral role in shaping social media and how it is today, people are quick to dismiss, oh yeah, but no, they can do no wrong. This is the Kardashian look. This is the Kardashians did this. No, which is completely false. And I think my biggest issue with them is all the blackfishing and the co-opting and profiting off of Black culture.
All eyes on me, I shine with everything I do. All eyes on me, yeah, I'll do me and you do you.
This is the Bold Bitch podcast, where I dive deep into conversations around taboo topics. I'm your gay, ADHD having, and compulsively curious host, Jay Goodrich, and among many things, I have a very low tolerance for bullshit. So each week, I have intriguing conversations with experts, tastemakers, rebels, and rule breakers who choose to boldly show up and own their opinion in this super intense call-out culture we find ourselves in. Because speaking your mind and trusting your gut isn't easy, but the boldest, truest version of yourself is exactly what the world needs. Hi, hey, how are yas? So I'm going to be doing a solo episode next week, where I'm going to dig into what is happening today, what has happened, and it is just a lot. So if you are feeling the emotional intensity, congratulations, you are a wonderful, tremendous empath, and I'm so grateful for you existing in the world. If you happen to have a little bit extra positive energy and want to send some my way, I will gladly, I'm telling you, gladly receive it, because I have been just hit by a dump truck of bullshit and life circumstance in this moment that I know is just like deepening my well of wisdom and empathy and grit and survivability. But right now, this moment, it just feels like I need a break. Universe, I need a break. Please help. Anyways, I say that and I'm being dramatic. It's also accurate. And yet, what is wonderful is that the way that I find myself through things, like navigate, because what I'm trying to do with all of this that is just hitting, coalescing at once, is trying to, for the first time maybe in my life, navigate it without disassociating and stuffing and saving it for a few years down the line. I'm also trying not to let it just pummel me so much that I lose my own center of gravity. So it's this windy, amorphous path of really trying to experience it, feel it, also reminding myself of the zoomed out trust and really flexing that muscle that everything that's happening to me is happening for me, but not trying to like spiritually bypass it, right? By like, oh, it's fine. I'm just going to like listen to music that like cheers me up and whatever. In those moments where I just need my brain to be able to go somewhere else so I can take my focus and allow my body to like do whatever it needs to do, I've been listening to podcasts. And so it's just been so beautiful and circle filling to be able to create and also receive. And some of the amazing podcasts I've been listening to have included Expanded by Lacey Phillips, which is just wonderful about manifesting and the science behind it and the energetics around that. And that has been really grounding and wonderful. Also, The School of Greatness, which is just by Lewis Howes, one of these old-standing, wonderful podcasts about people who have done great things and the wisdom that they show up with that. The Almost 30 podcast that has a lot of just really wonderful people, thought leaders who have different things going on and sharing about that has been really wonderful. Moonstone Witchery, because I've had some really amazing experiences I'm so excited to dig into in the solo episode next week, that have really like got me a little bit more in touch with the woo-ness and the energetics of things, which has been a brain fuck to say the least, but in a good way. And also QBT podcast, which if you don't know who they are, they're a couple of badass queer babes who I was on their podcast. They've been on my podcast, and just the way they talk about culture and then also bring on amazing guests, that has just been really wonderful to like click into. So if you haven't heard of any of them, I really encourage you to check them out because, you know, it's kind of hard to find podcasts as it were. But this episode, I'm so excited for you to listen. Our guest is just one of these creators, forces that has been doing such a wonderful job of anchoring what is happening in popular culture in the real authentic roots of indigeneity and Blackness, really presenting the research and the beauty and recontextualizing in such a wonderful way. She has a super complex, beautiful background. And we just had the best conversation about like Pablo Picasso, things I didn't know prior to, including thievery on an interesting note, and the Kardashians and what it means to be a culture vulture, and how can we honor without stripping things of their context. And just, it was just such a fabulous conversation. And of course, thank you for listening. And if it resonates, just, share with a friend, somebody that you love. And if you write a review, I can tell you right now, because of my precarious mental, emotional place, I will just extra receive that love with a force of magnitude that I will be super grateful for. And with that, I just fucking love you so much. Let's roll into the episode. Today's guest is a multifaceted and multicultural human who has created a sphere of influence that reflects her multiplicity of interests in such a fun and meaningful way. She is a creator, researcher, web designer, and educator who delves deep into the African history we were never taught in school and the origins of contemporary trends that are just straight up thievery. I first discovered her on TikTok, where myself and hundreds of thousands of other humans have fallen in love with her ability to deconstruct the way culture can be usurped by pop stars and influencers in a way that can celebrate or completely negate the rich history and context from which it comes. As a Belgian-born person with both Cameroonian and Congolese descent, as well as Belgian, Polish, and Ukrainian, she's navigated worlds both internally and externally, living in multiple countries in Africa and Europe. It's this connective experience that gives her the deep perspective in the cross-cultural similarities we share, as well as the misconceptions we can have about each other. Her love of African art and communication led her to launch an online platform exclusively dedicated to contemporary art from Africa and the African diaspora, work with United Nations-based radio, and ultimately use her skills in web development to help individuals and companies translate their visions in the digital world. The insightful, charming, and delightfully complex bold bitch, Tanaïssa. Let's just dig into like the weirdness that has been happening in my life. So like my cousin is a Reiki master healer, and I had never really had her work on me or anything. So she came over, did this, and it's one of my first times. So I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so transformative. And what was hilarious is she was like, so I'm doing these pendulum tests on you, and I'm going like your head chakra and your third eye. And it's just like, got it. She's like, I went to your throat and it was like, fuck no. It's like, okay. So we did all this work, which is ironic, right? Because like literally my job for a living is talking. And
It's talking, right?
Right. But I'm not good at really, there are a lot of times in my personal life where I will like silence my own voice to keep the peace or whatever. So anyways, we go through this like really intense time and all of this stuff. It's late, blah, 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 blah. We decided 2 years ago, I got these spelled candles that are, and they're in, where are they? They're in the background right here. And so this hoodoo priestess who just like has all of this magic, like literally integrates these candles with spells for whatever it is you're trying to manifest and bring about. And yeah, it's totally cool. So I've had these candles for 2 years because I am so neurotic that, and there are all these instructions that I was just like, nope, can't do it. Nope, can't do it. Because it was like, charge it in the full moon and then have this affirmation. And so last night at like 10 o'clock at night, my witchy, amazing Reiki cousin and myself are like chanting this affirmation and like lighting this candle. And then I had to like sleep with these candles burning. And yeah, and I can't put them out. Like they have to, there are two right here. One is for healing and the other is for good fortune and abundance. I just like am soaking up the energy and everything. So anyways, I woke up this morning and I felt like I had this like energetic junk punch from just like doing so much that I'm glad we're having this conversation, because it's literally like the first thing to ground me from like all of this like energy that has been happening for the last like, I don't know, 12 hours or something. So that's been my morning.
Interesting. No, that's interesting. That makes me think, because I have one of my very good friends, one of my childhood friends, just recently started getting into tarot reading or tarot cards, right? And I've always thought to myself, oh, well, when she was talking to me about it, I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't really believe in that stuff, blah, blah, blah. No, I'm a scientific mind. I don't really know,
Right.
which is not at all, which is not at all true. I'm actually very superstitious. But I like to tell people that I'm not, but I really am. I discovered that about myself. And so we go over to her house and she's like, hey, I should do a reading for you. And then I got super nervous. And that's when I realized, okay, no, I totally believe in this kind of stuff. I don't want you to get bad vibes off of me. Tell me what my energy is. Yeah. No, the reading was amazing. I mean, it was fabulous. I'd never done a reading before, but I don't know, it's really cool, all that stuff. And even all that stuff with energies, the vibes, the chakras and all that. I wouldn't say that I practice it in my day-to-day life, but I like hearing about it and I like learning about it. And if somebody tells me, for example, oh, no, your energy is kind of off today or whatnot, I'll be like, oh yeah, no, yeah, I totally understand that, So I do believe in it. I don't necessarily partake in it all the time, but I do believe in it, but I get so anxious. Again, anxiety. So
what's interesting is it sounds like you and I are very similar, because it was a fear-based decision to make my world one that is free of all this stuff I don't understand. So it was much easier for me to say, nope, that's not true. I don't believe that. I'm skeptical. That's not a part of my world. And it's been really humbling to open myself up and say, okay, like what if, and that was the thing, when I was on that table, she wasn't touching me. Well, not all the time, but like in the points when she wasn't touching me, I could feel like with this additional, I don't know how to explain it other than just energy. I could feel where she was around my body, and I could feel things change. And it was really fascinating, but it has been an intense journey and really allowing myself to open up, because I think the fear for myself is, if this has always been a factor, and if there have always been these energetic components, if there have always been ancestors, if there's always been all of this stuff operating, and I have been willfully and woefully neglecting it, like that's a little bit scary to myself. So
oh, I totally get that. Yeah.
Yeah. So now I'm like, okay, I'm open. I'm just, because I mean, there's another part of myself that's like, how audacious, but this has always been my thing. Like, you think you're a big enough deal to like have the answers in the face of this indigenous wisdom that has been operating for thousands of years? Yeah. Interesting, Gia.
No, I totally get that. And the same thing for me, it was a fear-based decision. And also, I think sort of, I don't know, rejecting a little bit my mother's advice or my mother's wisdom, I guess, because growing up, my mom's Cameroonian, so African. So there is all of that. I don't even want to say superstition, but, the as you said, wisdom of our elders and whatnot that has been infused throughout all these generations. And every single time she'd be like, oh, no, but this, don't do that because, otherwise bad things will happen, or do this because blah, blah. And growing up, I was like, oh my gosh, mom, just leave me alone. I know what I'm doing. Like, what are you talking about? We're in Belgium now. Leave me alone. And now with time, I'm finally starting to accept that back in, Yes. And also I think it's because it kind of got lost in all the, because I grew up very, very Catholic, in a very Catholic household. And so I was kind of rejecting all of that. And I kind of lumped it all together.
Right. And I think this is something that is very interesting about you and I that we share also, is that housing dualities. When you're living in a culture and an environment with a parent that is very much of one paradigm, like one world. And like, I think for me on my like white American side, which I mean, we're like Norwegian and Welsh and all of this stuff, but it was very much about Western science. That's just the cultural messages that like, it's about psychology and neurons and facts and all of this stuff. And then there is this other side. And I think about also my family in Costa Rica, where when I would get sick, the first thing and this is painful AF, but one of the things that they would do is take you to this woman who knew how to massage these points in your arm that literally felt like it was sucking the sickness out of you.
Ooh.
And it like I would be like crying and like snotty because it just hurt so bad. But I mean, there's
so much.
yeah. And there was just this, when you go to ask about it, like, why these points? Why, it was just like, because this is what we do. Like this, it's just information that has been passed down through
Right.
generations. And I think that, yeah, for me, in housing both aspects, culturally, racially, and then also, I think psychologically, between just this media culture and all of it, I think that it felt safer to me to land on the dominant culture, which for me that I'm around is this sort of whiteness, imperialist, colonialist vibes. And I'm really trying now to get back and really honor the woo-woo, the indigeneity, the ancestors, the like all of this stuff, and let it be something that is not like, really acknowledge that when somebody is poo-pooing it, that has to do with like colonial energy that's coming from this framework that I don't vibe with and I don't need to own.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, definitely. I definitely get that. And it's interesting because I also do believe that my mom also kind of got lost in it, in wanting to assimilate when, she came to Belgium because she was born in Cameroon, and then they left to Belgium with her family. So it was, okay, assimilate, don't talk about anything Cameroon related. I think growing up, she would give me some bits of advice that, she got from my grandmother, from her great grandmother, because my great grandmother was actually a healer in the village, right?
Oh, wow.
And and sadly, that's been lost. That's been lost because my grandma took her family to Belgium. And then at the time, she thought she was doing what was best for her children. So she was like, okay, we're going to assimilate. We're not going to talk about that stuff anymore. We are now just going to fit in with the white man, So sadly, that has been lost through the ages. But I think now I am coming back to it. But I don't know how to put this into words, but I feel like I never really moved away from it because I did grow up, in various African countries. It was when we moved back to Belgium, I was like, okay, yeah, talking about this stuff is weird. And also, I'm super religious. So detangling all of that and becoming, moving away from religion a little bit, I also moved away from that spirituality side, but it was always in the back of my head. And it's been a journey, reconnecting with that side. Yeah.
Well, and I think that story of cultural loss is so resonant with so many people. Like, I think about, I have this wonderful life friend that I've known since I was 3 named Nina, who's just like my amazing human. Her Nona, we grew up with her Nona from Italy because of that assimilation factor. Her daughter, Nina's mom, didn't learn Italian. And as a consequence, Nina doesn't speak Italian. And I think it's just, and same thing, I guess, in my own life, like my great grandmother was from Norway. If that had kept being passed down, like I could speak Norwegian. Like there's just like so much that is, I think, is lost in the immigrant story when your own culture isn't prioritized. And some people in some cultures are really great at it, really great at like teaching people to honor that and to really live with it. But I also think it probably has to do with the community that you're in, the ratio of people, because a lot of times when you are like the only one, it's really hard when all the pressure is around you. So let's talk about that, because I feel like your geographical story is super interesting in terms of where you come from, where you've moved to, where you've lived, and that set of experiences feels like it definitely informs your work.
Oh, it definitely does. I mean, so I was born in Belgium, right? But then I think I was 5 when due to my dad's job, we moved to Rwanda. I want to say, yes, we moved to Rwanda. And then again, because of my dad's job, we kind of moved around a bit. And he knew that he wanted to keep on working in Africa. And so we just moved in various African countries, which honestly, it was lit. It was an awesome childhood.
And what were some of the countries that you lived in as you moved around?
Yeah, Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, and then Guinea was the last country. But then there was a coup d'etat, and so we were forced to move back to Belgium. But in between all those travels and living in those different countries, we also visited a lot of other African countries, which is why even in my videos, I like to say that I like talking about African history and say African rather than, I don't know, Cameroonian or Congolese, because we moved around so much, I identify with that African side of me and not necessarily a particular country, because going back to what we were saying earlier, so my mom's Cameroonian, but she never taught me Iwundu, which is the language that we speak, that my family speaks. On my dad's side, he's just a hodgepodge of things. He's just, I don't know if I'm using that right, but he's just so many things. And on that side, so my grandpa was Polish and Ukrainian. And then my grandma is Congolese, right? On my grandpa's side, well, my grandpa, they spoke Yiddish, they were Jewish. And so that was also lost, throughout the generations. There was so much mix that now we get to our generation and I'm just out here speaking English and French like a loser. So,
oh my gosh, I love it. You're like, I'm only bilingual. It's so sad, which I totally resonate because it is like, when you surround yourself with people who are just like, we just came back from Denmark. Most people just to live in Denmark, by the very nature of their neighbors, speak at least 3 languages. Because a lot of the common language is English, because each country has a different language that they speak, although there are a lot of similarities. But yeah, it was just like, oh my gosh, you're what? And you just switched to Italian? What?
It's because also in Belgium, we have 3 national languages, French, Flemish, Dutch, and German. And so most people, a lot of people who speak Dutch also speak French. And, technically I'm supposed to be able to speak Flemish Dutch, but I'm a bad Belgian, so whatever. But
we won't hold it against you.
So it has always been this thing of, growing up. And also even in my own family, my mom speaks English, Iwundu, French, a little bit of Dutch, and my dad speaks like 7 languages. So speaking to, I'm really the odd one out. And, growing up now, I don't know, I kind of resent them for it because they did what was best at the time. They were like, no, you're going to learn English and blah, blah, blah. But I would have liked learning Iwundu or Lingala, a little bit of those languages, those languages that are spoken from,
the people, the fam.
Yeah,
yeah,
from the African side,
yes.
And so, I mean, I could also say, yeah, I would have loved to speak Russian or Yiddish, but that's not the case.
One of the things that I think is fascinating about you is that if I think about most people having lived in a country in Africa, don't really feel like they can generalize, because they will say no, my experience is very much rooted in Kenya. This is what it's about, la, la, la. That's very different than Sudan. That's very different than Cameroon. There's, blah, 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 which I think is really important because so many people outside of that continent just lump everything together and don't really realize that the most genetic diversity is in this place versus everywhere else.
Oh my gosh.
Not all these people are the same.
Definitely. And the fact that we have to keep reminding people that Africa is a continent and not a country is honestly infuriating. We're in 2021. People still ask me oh, what? You speak African? I'm like, what? Come on now.
They do not. I feel embarrassed on behalf of humanity.
I've had that question asked to me not even a year ago. So it's just, what are you even talking about? Or something that really makes me laugh is when, for example, I meet someone and, they see that I'm mixed and they're like, oh, okay, where are you from? And I'm like, okay, Belgium. Because sometimes I don't want to get into all the nitty gritty. So I'm just like, yeah, Belgium. And this actually happened recently. I think it was I want to say, I don't know, but during the pandemic at some point, I crossed my neighbor and he's like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And we start to get talking and he's like, oh, so where are you actually from? And I'm like, okay, I'm Belgian, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, okay, but where exactly? I'm like, oh, well, Brussels. And he's like, oh, yeah, yes. But like, what are your origins? So I'm like, okay, I'll tell him. Okay, I'm Cameroonian and Congolese. And he's like, oh my gosh, that's so funny. Okay, so my son bought a house in Senegal, and honestly, it's love. And I'm just like, what? Come on. Talking about two different countries. Those are not the same. What is this? What are you on about? And so it's just funny that sometimes people think, okay, Africa, Black people, it's the same everywhere. No, it's not. It's really not.
I mean, I get it. Like our brain, and this is the thing that I try to like give people grace about, because that's my like try in life. That's like my working toward exercise is like, let's give everybody grace, including yourself, Goodrich. But it's this, is that our brains are wired to synthesize things and to make the world easy. And so you have to actively work against that to try to see the nuance, to try to see the difference and blah, blah, blah. So anyways, that's just my little rant and like trying to be gracious with like people who are just showing up suboptimally. But one of the things that I'm fascinated about with you in general is that feeling of, yes, there are so many different countries and cultures and histories within this continent. However, because of your experience living in quite a few, you are in this position to see a lot of the commonalities and a lot of the overarching sort of themes that people would still miss when they lump everything together. But being able to pull that out and also really link that to popular culture, what's happening here. So can you talk about some of those themes and differences that you really noticed, especially in coming back to Belgium, that you're like, whoa, this is way different from like people in Belgium are definitely missing out. Like,
I wish something deeper had come at the top of my head, but one thing that just popped right away was the warmth. And I'm going to say this is notably in West Africa and Central Africa, but I know for a whole time I wanted to come back and live in Guinea or go to and live in Senegal or go back to Congo and just live there, because the warmth of the people is something that you just don't get in Belgium at all. And I'm not saying, I'm not going to bash on Belgium. It's also one of my countries. I love Belgian people. I love drinking beer. I don't know, but it's not. It's not the same. It's not the same thing. And something sadly that is also common throughout all of these African countries are the inequalities, but not only that, how flagrant they are. Do you know what I mean? It's not the same thing as, sadly, in Europe. And I guess that's why people tend to lump all these countries together, lump all, the different histories, the different stories that each of these countries hold, because what's been presented in the media, which is true, is the flagrant display of income inequality. And it sucks that that's another thing that comes to mind when I want to think of the commonalities. But another thing that's very common throughout all the countries are the different dialects and the rich cultural history that each of these countries hold. I mean, I'm still learning to this day, I'm not in a position to say that, no, I know everything about every single African country. No, I just talk about what I've experienced and what I want to know, I guess, because African history, and I'm saying African history because I'm not going to start listing all of the countries, but it's so diverse and so rich that it's quite unfortunate that it's not talked about more often,
Mm-hmm. Well, and you shared a story on TikTok about, if I remember correctly, it was like somebody saying like, oh my gosh, you moved back from Africa? Like, and speculating about what your experience was like. Can you share that?
Oh my gosh, that was, I made a video on it, but I think that was one of the first instances where I experienced casual racism, honestly. And I got a lot of comments saying, oh my gosh, but why are you so mad at those girls? So basically the story was, we went to Switzerland for a ski trip. And at the time we lived in Guinea. So it was a class ski trip. We were sitting at a table and I was put at a table with some mean girls, literal mean girls, like from the movie, little Regina Georges is just sitting there. And I felt so uncomfortable. It was one of the first times I was surrounded by so many white people, so I was very scared. I felt very intimidated. And they just started asking me casual questions like, oh, okay, so you live in Guinea. Oh, okay. So like, do you take an airplane every day to go back to Belgium? Do you ride cheetahs to school? Do you just questions of that nature? I'm sitting there like, how do I, it's awful because at the time I didn't know how to respond. I think right now it would have been like, oh my gosh, yes, sometimes giraffes, sometimes elephants, it depends on the day, just to really drive home that ignorance. But at the time I was so shocked because it never occurred to me that people could be that ignorant. And even at the time, being 10 years old, I realized that what they were telling me was not okay. It was kind of veiled with racism. So what I find interesting is comments that I got underneath that video. Oh, but those are 10-year-old girls. People change, maybe now they don't think that way. And perhaps they don't. I mean, I hope that they don't. But even at the time, I myself as a 10-year-old girl was like, this is not okay. I would have never assumed that about, Europe. What do you all, I don't know where Vikings had, just even at the time, I knew that it was bizarre.
Are you all like raping and pillaging everyone like on the weekends? Is that a thing? Because I've heard that's a thing.
Yeah. Do you like go and pillage other countries? Like what do you guys do? I don't. So.
Well, and so this is a thing that's fascinating to me, being somebody who's like a student of media culture, is that we are very much a product of what we're exposed to. So if you think about, for like, let's say the average American, really the kind of messages we get about Africa, generally speaking, is that it's kind of all similar. There are people who need help because there are little kids with distended bellies who aren't getting enough food. Like, unless you are actively looking for something different, that is what you know. And that, I think, is why, for me, I'm so passionate about media and leveraging media and representation, because to that end, like if that was all we were allowed to be exposed to, it would 100% make sense that there would be these assumptions about what it's like and how we should feel sorry for people and all of this stuff. However, there's like no policing around what we are exposed to. And it is really easy to do a YouTube search, to do a Google search, and train your media feeds to expose yourself to something different. When I hear people responding that way, that is really the underlying message that I hear, is one of either they don't know or they don't care enough to change the fact that the media that they're getting is deeply biased. Because all media is deeply biased, but we really have to curate everything that's coming at us. And so I have empathy on one hand, because if you don't know what you don't know, but I also feel like it, like in the case of those girls, that's really a sad thing that their parents weren't clocking that they weren't like really thinking, what are our girls being exposed to? Because that kind of casual racism is something that is a part of the dominant culture in most places. But it's something that can be remedied. It's something that can be counterbalanced. And it like with a TV show, like it's not even like it has to be textbook reading,
That's why even in that video, I mean, I don't blame those girls. I mean, we were all young. However, that was the first but not the last time that I heard something like that being said to me, or being said generally. And although there is some truth to what the media shows us about certain African countries, it's not the whole truth. And that's what I find infuriating, I don't even know why there aren't more stories about the beauty and creativity that so many of these countries hold. I mean, African art is absolutely beautiful. I mean, that's something that I had forgotten myself. And when we went back to Congo, I was like, there's so much creativity around here. There's so much beauty. And also the beautiful nature. And yes, of course, the media sometimes shows the safaris or whatnot, but those aren't the only things that exist, you know?
Let's talk about that really quickly because I remember I had watched a video of yours where you were talking about art specifically and saying like, hey, this really famous artist over here that you're like really loving and celebrating. Let's like unpack a few things. So can you talk us through some of these instances of things we might not know, like that we might not know we deeply love aspects of like African art and we don't know because we saw it packaged as something else?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Pablo Picasso, and this was something that I myself learned recently, was heavily inspired by African art, especially from the West for Cubism, you know, the Cubism movement. I mean, when you go back to, let's say, even Mali, you know, you go to Mali, you see all these masks, you see the structures of the little statues that they build, and you're like, wow, this looks like something out of a Pablo Picasso painting. No, that was the inspiration behind the Pablo Picasso painting, you know?
Yeah.
And it is something that's honestly quite sad. And I think it's changing nowadays through TikTok and through YouTube. More and more people are talking about different facets of the African continent, different facets of African art, and more African artists are being exposed on a main stage. However, in the past, African art was relegated to, okay, these are small artisans on the side of the road, just making their little statuettes, and that's that. Where no, they actually were behind one of the most popular movements in Europe, you know, public Cubism. I mean, it's insane.
Yes. And I remember when I watched that video of yours, what was so striking is the fact that most people will, just knowing that most people will dismiss it, particularly coming from an art background myself. There is this whole kind of mystique around great artists steal and inspiration, whatever. And I hope we're moving out of that and saying more that great artists cite, right? That they're saying, I drew inspiration from here. I am not claiming this as my own. But you, I mean, it was just so evident that Pablo Picasso specifically, who is, you know, an interesting figure in and of itself in terms of some of the like deeply misogynistic factors and like, yeah. But, you know, this artist that is in every textbook about art is just celebrated, was literally studying this art.
It's absolutely crazy. Just the fact that he had a studio, just a space where he collected African art, you know? And going back to that quote, which is why I said in that video, no, inspiration without credit is theft. And yeah, okay, great artists steal, whatever. But then there's so many amazing artists that are just relegated to the background where they're the inspiration behind some of the biggest movements. And that is something that has sadly always been the case with be it African art or, you know, certain African music, or I'm going to venture and say even Black art, Black music. So, you know, it was kind of tough reading about that because I was like, oh my gosh, Pablo Picasso, you little slimy bitch. But
you scamp, you. Yeah.
You little.
The fuckery is running deep over here, my man.
But sadly, it's the truth. And even now, so I went back to my mother's house recently and really took a step back and looked at all of because she has a very big collection of African art, be it statues, paintings, little trinkets. So she just has a vast collection. And I always thought growing up, I was like, this is too much. What are we, the Africa House? Why do you need to show this? Oh my gosh, we get it. Okay. But now I find it very soothing and I'm very appreciative of the fact that she did that. Because taking a step back and looking at the beauty of it all I mean, it's impressive. It's honestly impressive. There's some statues in her collection where I'm like, wow, how did I never realize the intricacy and the attention to detail, just generally the attention to detail to these statues. And sadly, they're sold for what, 20, I want to say 20 euros or $20 on the side of the street when they're masterpieces, you know, where here in Europe, they'd be sold for thousands and thousands. So,
right. And that's something that I really struggled, and ultimately why I left the fine art community, maybe not forever, but definitely for a good long time, is because I really realized art is like 99.9% about context, meaning the way that you package something, the aura that you surround the thing by really determines whether or not, or it just determines how it's perceived and received. And that there's a systematic gatekeeping of the context. And so you have people who are just actively dismissing all of these folks because they don't speak art. And I myself went into that situation. I didn't really speak art, but I trained myself to be a masterful communicator and somebody who's really good at faking it till I made it. And I learned the language just like anything else. And so I can go into those contexts and I can take something and really give it that elevated, rarefied air to it and make it receivable. And to me, there was always something, I don't know if you're familiar with the fable of the Emperor's New Clothes. Basically, like the crux of it is that there's this king, and the king is like so just in his own whatever that he allows this swindling guy to come in who's the best, most amazing, design something wonderful, and he's literally naked. It's all imaginary. And this king is so convinced that it's like, oh, it's so gorgeous because this person has just spun the perfect context for it.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Okay,
yes. And the thing is, and this was the part that really got me, is in the fable, and I can't remember exactly how it goes, but basically everybody else was so terrified to tell the king that it wasn't real that they let it keep going. And it was like one brave soul that was just like, and if we look historically at those brave souls, usually there are a lot of painful consequences. They might be burned at the stake. They might be imprisoned. Those people who are willing to really stand up and say, hey, this thing. And not that I'm this, martyr for art, but I definitely felt like in my grad school program, I was receiving so much negativity because of that fact that I refuse to say that this is better than this just because we're looking at a white cube. Okay. I am just like, I'm over it. And you're telling me that's more important because you can find this lineage of other white dudes making white cube art and blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. Now that, of course, is an oversimplification, but yeah.
No, yeah. One thing I realized was that a lot of these artists, so when we lived in Congo and we met different artists, a lot of them just simply the reason why they couldn't export their art outside was because they didn't know how to market themselves. And that's something that I realized needed to be done. Well, that people did in the art world, marketing yourself and finding your tone and saying, no, look at this. It's, as you said, it's a white wall. And they'll be like, oh my gosh, but it depicts the end of civilization. We all started, we're going back to where it all started, a white sheet. And you're like, what?
Yeah. Or having like a romantic backstory like Basquiat, where it's like, oh yes, torture, but brilliant and queer. And we like this, but not too many of them. Just like one a generation is perfect for us. Just one.
And so that was quite well, I'm not going to say infuriating, but I was like, I didn't know that this was also the case in the art world. I just thought that the art spoke for itself, but in the case of a lot of these artists, it simply didn't. And it's funny because an artist that we had at the time, Vatunga, so he would sell his art pieces. I think it was something like $20. And then, so he started getting a little bit more exposition. And then one day, he was there in a gallery and this guy came and he was like, oh, I want to buy your art piece for $60,000. And then that was that. That was that. He just became, but it's insane how it can go. And I'm not saying he totally deserves it. His art is magnificent, but just the fact that it's quite subjective, like the money that they're willing to put into it, then that becomes the market value of your art piece. So I don't know. It's just it was fascinating to me because there are thousands of other Vatungas out there, and they're not getting the same chances.
And that was always my big complaint, is that it always felt to me like horse betting. And now what's interesting is, I don't know if you've seen, I just watched Squid Game. Have you seen this?
Oh my gosh, I haven't, and I'm so mad because oh no, we're gonna start tonight. But everyone has been talking about it. I've seen it everywhere on my timeline.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was so deeply phenomenal, beautiful, traumatic AF. Feel like I need therapy after Squid Games. But one of the things that felt resonant to me in this whole area is that there's this idea of betting on a horse and betting on humans. And I've definitely felt that in the art world, that nobody wants to bet on somebody who's untested and unproven. They don't want to be that brave person to say, yeah, you're selling this for $15, but I know it's worth $60,000. They don't want to be that first person. But then once somebody bets, it's so much easier to get other people rushing in when you're represented by the right people that give you the right amount of clout, blah, blah, blah. And that really has nothing to do with the piece itself. And that's always been so much of my issue, is that all of those, like, really, then it becomes a story about gatekeeping, a story about power and leverage. And that's why there's so much connection and pull and who you know that factors into a lot of, and I don't want to like negate the amazing work of the artists who have made it, who are in ArtNet and Artforum. Like I know some of them, and like that doesn't negate the people who have, but there are so many other people who haven't, that one person hasn't come in to bet on them. And so to take it to like this super dark Squid Gamey place is like, it's really the extreme of that, the extreme of dehumanizing and commodifying people. And I think that that's what was like, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it, because this was the story that was just so exaggerated. But I think the reason it's resonating so deeply is that there is something so true about that dynamic that we deeply recognize, that is playing into all of our lives, that is just scary as fuck. Okay, so now that we're all good and wound up, let's also talk about more thievery. I would love to get into the Kardashian clan. Now, I'm just going to say, just straight up, I have deep love for them. Like I feel like if we were humans in real life, and also true love necessitates boundaries and accountability. So let's talk about some some of your, can you share? Because for a lot of people, I don't think they understand the thievery and how it might be showing up, and the blackfishing and all of this kind of context around not only the Kardashians, but how they're influencing popular culture.
First of all, I'd just like to say, because I did a video on them, and I do have respect for the Kardashians. You may say, oh my gosh, no, but look at Kim and how she got her start. No, that family made bank. Honestly, their business ways, I don't know what they did, but they're smart, okay? As I said, Mama Jenner didn't raise no fools, and she's no fool herself. So I really do love their business acumen. And honestly, they're all stunning. I don't have issue with that. What I have issue with is people dismissing the fact that because they've played such an integral role in shaping social media and how it is today, people are quick to dismiss, oh yeah, but no, they can do no wrong. You know, this is the Kardashian look. This is the Kardashians did this. No, which is completely false. And I think my biggest issue with them is all the blackfishing and the co-opting and profiting off of Black culture. I myself am not a Black American, but even as a person of color looking from the outside, it's patently clear. It's evident, you know? And so just speaking about it, I got riled up. What made me come to this realization was, I don't even watch the Kardashians, but there was this, I think it was a reunion episode or whatever. And so there were all the Kardashians, and Kim looked darn near darker than me. And I was like, okay, there's a problem here. I don't understand.
As a quick timeout, I definitely want to get back to that. But there's this YouTuber that I follow named Lori Hill. She is like a plastic surgery YouTuber. She goes in and
Wait, I think I follow her too.
She's amazing. I love her. And the thing that I love about her is she's not shaming about it. Her whole thing is like plastic surgery is a tool. I just want to show you what I'm seeing so that if you are thinking that these people are all naturally perfect, you're not. And if you want to use this information to empower yourself, cool. But one of the things that blew my mind was she talked about how Kim got that dark. And do you know how?
How? Oh, no, I don't.
It's an injectable that messes with your melanin. Yes, your melanocytes that darkens you from the inside out. Yes. We'll link it in the show notes. But I was just like, what? And she talked about other people that you can clearly see. It's a certain type of bronzing and deepening of skin tone that is specific to this injectable. And it's a liquid like insulin or whatever. I know. Wow, okay. Anyways, crazy. But I want to go back to that. So,
man, people with money will forever find ways to, make me gasp. Wow. So I watched that video and I was like, okay, there's something wrong here. So I started talking about how the Kardashians are culture vultures because even though the first three Kardashians have a rich history themselves, I mean, Armenia is absolutely, their history is absolutely interesting. It's absolutely magnificent, but they've decided to co-opt Black culture because sadly, and I guess they've also played a huge part in this as well. Black culture has been commodified, through apps like TikTok, through Instagram, and the Kardashians have a major role in all of that. I don't even want to say that I don't understand why they do that, but I actually do, because nowadays looking racially ambiguous or mixed is a marketing advantage. And they have carved out that marketing advantage for themselves, And so what's sad is that, for example, I talked about boxer braids and how Kim K said, okay, these are boxer braids, when no, actually they're Fulani braids, and other hairstyles that she's taken from Black culture or from African culture in the Black diaspora, and then just reinvented as her own, because it's so much sexier to say, oh, Kim K invented boxer braids, rather than let's look at the history behind these braids. Let's look at the tragedy behind these braids, and let's understand why people get so emotional when talking about braids, because these braids have a specific history. And I'm not even saying that they've just co-opted off of Black culture, because I saw people started tagging me in this thing that she did, or not her, but Kendall, Mexican tequila, and how that was problematic. Yeah. How who wore Indian headpieces and all of that other stuff. And they continue doing it because it's profitable for them. They've gotten away with it. And it's sad because, for example, if they just donned blackface, people would be like, okay, hold up. What's going on? No, let's shut the whole thing down. And even then, I don't know, people would still be on their side. But what people don't understand is that Blackfishing has become sort of the modern blackface, I'd say, because even though it's not, exaggerating features to the detriment of Black people, it's still fetishizing Black features, taking which parts you like, putting them on your body, and just strutting around and having people praise you for it. Whereas Black women, especially dark-skinned Black women, get ostracized for having those same features.
Right. And I think that is the point that really helps us understand why it's harmful, is that these are, like, whether it's really intense lip filler or it's a hairstyle, it's these aspects that people can put on, take off. And the fact that people who that is an integral part of who they are, they cannot remove these things, have experienced racism. And well, let's just talk about like braids in particular, because still there are a lot of states in the US where somebody can legally fire you because they deem your hairstyle to be inappropriate for the work environment. Like, that's still something that can very much happen. So let's talk about, and like, pick the hairstyle of your choice that they have usurped. And like, let's just talk about a little bit of the history and why it's sticky.
So just cornrows specifically, I think the issue with a lot of people is that historically, enslaved Africans would use cornrows as road maps because they weren't allowed to write. They were never taught how to read because, the masters didn't want them to escape. And so they cleverly hid maps within their cornrows. And so these cornrows helped a lot of enslaved Africans, be it in America or even in South Africa, escape. The history is so interesting and it runs deep, and so to have that history erased by someone who decided to take it because it just looked pretty is infuriating for a lot of people, and it saddens me that some people just don't want to see that.
Right.
There's always a lot of history that comes with African hairstyles, and I'd like to make one thing clear. I don't even have an issue with people that wear lip fillers or get BBLs or even white people that decide to wear cornrows or wear African braided hairstyles. I mean, I'm not sure your hair type is for it, but whatever.
If you're out on vacation and you're getting it done by somebody who's who's from there, you might look ridiculous with your sunburn, but do you, boo?
Do you? I honestly, I don't, contrary to what a lot of people think on the app, I don't hate white people, okay? I hate the racist institutions that have been put in place to our detriment. Okay, let's make one thing clear. Anywho, I don't even have a problem with that. The problem here is that the Kardashians hold so much influence. Just the fact that they're willing to take a certain hairstyle or take a certain aspect of Black culture without acknowledging the historical aspect of it is quite sad because they have such a big platform. They could be doing that, They could be telling people, okay, I did this, or I don't know, North did this and blah, 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 blah. But no, they choose to take it, co-opt it, profit off of it. And it's all to their advantage. And that honestly is what kind of sickens me, because if they did that, especially in the world we live in today where social media voices are being heard more and more, or, I don't want to say social media voices, but the celebrities, I mean, their input counts for something. If they came out and said, okay, here's the deal with cornrows, not boxer braids. Here's the deal with Fulani braids, not blah, blah, blah. People would listen. And I don't know, maybe things would start changing. I mean, they did change the way women show themselves on Instagram. So why not use it for good? I don't know.
Yes.
Use that power for good rather than evil. I don't know.
Well, and my whole thing is and trying to stay away from evil, because that's where that ambiguous space where it's it's not 100% good, it's not 100% evil, but it's not ultimately pushing things toward a beneficial, optimal place. And I think it's that gray area that a lot of people tend to get lost and not really understand that they're contributing to a problem, right? Because I mean, that is the thing. I love that point, and I think it's so beautiful to say when Kim gets photographed in these braids, instead of saying, oh, they're Bo Derek braids, saying, no, these are Fulani braids that come from these people and this moment, and this is the history, and this is on the Met carpet, that would be a huge moment, a huge statement, something that could really positively impact people.
Because Black people, particularly Black women, are still being ostracized for wearing those hairstyles that come from their culture, that they have a historical tie to. And that's what I find it's kind of fascinating, honestly. The fact that the world appreciates or wants the Black aesthetic, but just not on Black people. That's very problematic, and that kind of sucks. And like I just mentioned, it's honestly kind of fascinating. It's kind of whoa, how, what? Okay.
To me, and I know you resonate with this, where it's just it boggles my mind that just in my lifetime, the things that I was teased for, that signaled to people that I was not like them, that made me the outsider, that made me the alien, are the cool points that now I'm rocking in this situation. And there's no difference in the inherent value of the way I look. It's just that now all of a sudden it's cool to be ethnically ambiguous. Now all of a sudden it's cool to have big lips. Now all of a sudden it's cool to have, my thing are the fox eyes. Have you, like the fox
Oof.
eye thing?
Yeah.
WTF. I had gotten so much, like I would say 80% of the torment that I received in grade school had to do with the shape of my eyes. The fact that they are tilted on the ends, and it was just always a source of this negativity, this making me feel like an outsider. And now it is like last year
All
it
the
was like on the
rage.
it was like the top what in the top 10 Googleable searches for whatever, and like these women are spending thousands of dollars, and I'm not shaming anybody who wants to engage
Crazy.
in plastic surgery, because like that is do you boo, and there's some when I have the funds to be able to commit to it, I'm planning on doing myself, although I won't be the fox eyes because bitch was born with them.
That it's the same thing with my lips, and I found a diary that I had written back when I was 7, and in it I wrote, oh my gosh, so they're making fun of me because I have big lips, and I have, which this next comment is a problem in of itself, but they're like, I have Indian slanted eyes, which okay is also problematic, but I used to get teased about that all the time, and I always thought to myself younger, I was like, okay, whenever I'll grow older, I'll change my eyes and I'll make them wide, like super wide, like anime eyes big, just like I had all these plans. And then come here these past couple of years, no, actually, I'm Gucci. So what really bothers me with the trends right now is that they're often to the detriment of Black people, notably Black women, because all of these, bigger butts. And again, I have no issue with that. Do it. Honestly, I would get a bigger butt too if I had the funds. But when seen on Black bodies, they're deemed ghetto or, as you mentioned earlier, unprofessional. So
Overly
it's just
sexualizing.
this whole, it's this whole dichotomy. And, beauty trends are set by, there's still this red line of the European standard. And I don't know, that's why I think I rail against the Kardashians in my video, even though I have nothing personally against them. It's just that those spaces or, their influence could be used to try and change things up, because it's annoying when you see people profit from African culture or Black culture. And it comes back to this thing with Pablo Picasso, and never acknowledge it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of the same thing, except in modern times.
Well, and I actually think now this is like a new thought, so we'll see how it simmers into existence. But I think about Madonna as being another cultural figure that throughout her career has definitely absorbed. Like I remember when she was really into the Kabbalah, and then I remember there were these other points where if you look through her different iterations, she was definitely borrowing from different places. However, and I might be wrong, feel free to let me know, correct me, but it seems like she cited things more. Now, I do know one maybe exception might be with Vogue, because although she did really feature people who were from the ballroom community, like it wasn't totally divorced. But when I think about, she went through her super spiritual time and whatever, but she would be very clear about, this is where I'm studying. And uplift the people that she was learning from and surrounding herself with. Now, again, it might be just me misremembering, but it seems like there was a little bit more integrity in that. It felt more like aggressive borrowing than just straight up stealing and cord cutting things from their original context. And I just wonder, because that's been such a big part of popular culture, is this idea of reinventing yourself. And when you're going through this process of reinventing yourself, you're constantly looking for inspiration, and designers will pull from different cultures and things like that. And so there is a question, I think, or an argument that could be made about, still you're profiting, even if you are highlighting, right? You're still profiting off of people of color and their work and their labor and their designs and all of this stuff, even if you are keeping the context, but still doing that. But it just seems like there's a gray area where there's a way that's at least a little bit more authentic and considerate than just rebranding, repackaging something altogether.
Right. I don't know enough about Madonna, but what I will say is that I think this whole thing will continue being an issue until there are enough people of color in those spaces. There is a difference between cultural appreciation and cultural appropriation. And it's a very blurry line between the two. And I completely understand that it's not always evident to culturally appreciate without tiptoeing on the border of cultural appropriation. However, I think with time, it will be judged more authentic when there are more people of color in those particular spaces. And it's starting to happen. I mean, from what I see, but there aren't enough.
To your point, I think the question is, well, why? Like, why would you need to borrow at all? Why is this self-expression, this style, whatever, like, why is it that you're feeling particularly drawn, that you're wanting to really connect with whatever? And then, like, really having that inventory and then asking, like, how can I do this in the most ethical and responsible way possible? And I don't think any of us are particularly perfect at that. But I think it's just like with anything, it's really about the rigor. It's really about stepping out of your default and really applying thought and intentionality in the way you're doing things. Like, again, I love those bitches, but like with the Kardashians, I feel like because they are so hugely influential, and by one word, one picture can affect massive market shifts, right? And create huge demand for something over here that there was zero demand for. That there is this sparkling opportunity, considering I know they love Black people. I know they love Black culture. Like that part is, well,
very evident. I think that a lot of people need to understand, because I got comments like these as well. Like, oh, but her child is mixed, kind of. Having Black friends or family or just being acquainted with Black people isn't an excuse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can have Black family members and still be culturally insensitive. I mean, on TikTok, I see a lot of stories of mixed people talking about their white family members being completely racist to them. And so it's not okay, I've got a Black friend, I'm Gucci. No, it's not the case. And I feel like the Kardashians, they use their family as a way to shield themselves from criticism, because they're like, oh no, but look, Northie here is mixed. Oh look, I married Kanye. I'm with Travis Scott. It's not an excuse. And on that front, they can do better. With everything else, I mean, they're fine. They're billionaires, but on that front, they could do better.
Well, and that's the thing. I think that it is so evident that they do love Black culture and Black people. To your point, that doesn't buy you a pass, right? That you can tend to overly familiarize yourself with things when really you shouldn't. But also, I think because there is what I believe this genuine intent to love and to celebrate and to share, then to me, it's just how can we do that in a way that's not lazy and doing harm, whether or not it's intentional. And I think there could be an argument, because there's been enough backlash. I think there could be an argument that there has to be some intentionality and like controversy stirring, where it's like, well, I'm willing to like be a little insensitive or a little bit of a dick because I know it's going to this picture is going to go viral. I mean, just because it's like, there's no way that you couldn't have gotten this feedback from a lot of people. But I do and maybe it's just my hopeful disposition, my tendency and desire to see the best in everyone. But I really do feel like there is this genuine intention and love there. And so to my mind, then it's like, well, how do we marry that with actions that demonstrate that? Once you start asking yourself questions like that, you can start to show up in a way that is more meaningful. And I think I'm going to link this creator in the show notes because I can't remember their TikTok off the top of my head, but it's someone who has this very voluminous and really tightly curled red hair. And this person is very white, light and freckly, and makes amazing, amazing content. And one of the things that came up is that this person was raised in a Black family. And so when people were asking, like, why are you wearing these braids? Why are you whatever? That they were saying, well, this is how I grew up. This is the culture that I come from, whatever. However, what they said is that they stopped, and they've stopped even though out of anybody else, they probably have the most right to, as somebody who looks like them, having grown up in those circumstances. But they realize the implication and the potential harm that that can do. And so they wear different protective hairstyles. And I think that that is the true sign of somebody who is demonstrating in their actions the love and the reverence for people who are often marginalized in culture, and really demonstrating that in a meaningful way.
I mean, I completely agree with you in that, because I've just been saying, the Kardashians this, the Kardashians that, but I think there is a genuine love there for Black culture in general. However, I just come back to this thing with a platform as big as theirs. I just feel like they could be doing more. You know what I mean? That's why, like, for example, I got a comment saying, hey, but, I've worn these braids. Okay, I'm sorry. It's so bad. And I thought to myself, no, it's okay. I mean, I'm not saying don't wear these braids. I mean, I'd rather perhaps you didn't, because you'll damage your hair. But I really don't. No, but I mean, when someone has as much influence as the Kardashians, maybe then I'll be like, okay, this is problematic. But people in their day-to-day lives are allowed to make mistakes. And I know people that, even love African culture and that will wear African garments or try and speak, which I've told them to stop, in an African accent. But, it's just, oh my gosh, but I love the culture so much. I blah, blah, blah. And there are ways to show that.
We just have to clarify. You've met people who will speak in their dominant language with an African accent because of like their affinity for the.
No, I say African accent, but I have to specify it's mostly try to do a Congolese accent, for example.
No. I get that. Yeah, I get that you're talking about a specific place, but like this is a thing that people are like, oh my gosh, I just love this place so much that I'm going to start.
I just threw that out there, but I'm thinking of a very particular person who actually grew up surrounded by Congolese folk, and I think he grew up in Kinshasa, and so he very much relates to Kin, as we call it, Kinshasa, and the Congolese culture. And so, yeah, you're going to grow up with a Congolese accent. I mean, there's no issue with it. However, what was bizarre was when we were in Belgium, just all hanging around, and there he is, just speaking in a Congolese accent, and I'm like, huh. Kind of weird. I mean, we're not in Congo anymore, but okay, well, I guess so. And so we talked about it, and it's just this thing of, okay, but I grew up in Congo. I feel Congolese. I mean, I feel like it's also my culture, and I have just so much love for it. And in that instance, I was like, okay, well, maybe just lay off a little bit the Congolese accent. It's a bit bizarre, but it is this thing of, I understand that as well. He grew up with Congolese friends. And so there was just so much appreciation there for the culture. It's just this whole thing of, okay, you can love a specific culture. Just like, for example, I don't know, I love Japanese culture, for example. Okay. But I don't know enough about it. So tomorrow I'm not gonna, because I love it, just start wearing a kimono everywhere. You know what I mean? And that's sort of the parallel that I'm trying to make, where it's, you can love a culture and show appreciation for it in other ways rather than appropriating something from that particular culture.
Got it.
As I said, it's a fine line, we have to tiptoe on that line, but it's the work has to be done. Otherwise, as you said beforehand, it gets lazy. It's lazy,
Yeah. Well, that is super fascinating to me, because it would make sense to me if that person was raised there and, like, let's say, learned English from teachers teaching in Congo who had an accent, right? Like, if you're learning a language from people with a certain accent, that's the accent you absorb. Like, that makes sense to me.
I just like to point out that there are white people who were born in Congo and who, do speak with a Congolese accent, even speak Lingala because they're born there. they grew up there, their whole family's there, so they associate with their Congolese identity rather than their Belgian identity, even if
right. But that's different than like, oh yeah, I moved to Jamaica 15 years ago from the US. And now when I go back to Florida, I talk with a Jamaican accent. Like that. Yeah. Like that's a little different. That doesn't quite track. Well, I think what's interesting about cultural appreciation,
kind of like Hilaria Baldwin, just
that is exactly what I was thinking, because I love. Well, so if you're not familiar with the story of Hilaria Baldwin, it's Alec Baldwin's partner. And a few years ago when they met, she had said she's from Spain. And even the way that she pronounces her name, which is interesting because it's not actually how you would pronounce it. It's spelled Hilara, I think so. But in Spanish, you would say Hilaria. You wouldn't say Hilaria, because H's are silent. So anyways, so it's just kind of a weird thing that I think other people have pointed out as well. But basically, she lived there for a while and really developed an affinity, all this stuff, but presented herself as though she was Latina and from Spain. And then, of course, social media. Hi. And so people are like, bitch, you're from Michigan. Like, you're literally from Michigan and your parents don't speak Spanish. Like people have just like busted her. And she's ended up backtracking a little bit and, blah, blah, blah. And there's a part of that really resonates. Like, I totally do understand. And like, if you think about like in terms of woo-ness, like you might have past lifetimes where you really feel like, oh, this is where I was coming, whatever. And maybe if we lived in an environment where there wasn't all of this institutionalized racism, then maybe that would be fine to just be like, hey, like, do you live as your authentic self? And if that means that you are transracial, let's go. I mean, although I would say I would know a lot of people firsthand that would be Japanese in a heartbeat. Like there's something, the cool factor with Japan is just like on a level 10. And I feel like that series of islands would have a population problem because of all the people who are like, nope, Japanese. But not to 100%.
Do feel like a lot of
Yeah, I'm like, not to 100% make light of it, because I do understand. But yes, we live in a context, in a society where that's not the case. People are like, I mean, really, like with Japan specifically, in Oregon, where I live, they had internment camps during World War II. So they rounded up anybody of Japanese heritage and made them live in an enslaved, enclosed way, took their belongings. Like these were like work death camps. Well, I'm sure some people died, but I not to exaggerate it, but not to like also make it seem like, oh, they went camping, like it was a very serious, like scary thing. And people lost so much generational wealth. Like this is not so even though now it's like, it's cool to be Japanese, we love manga, all of this stuff. It's still
isn't
like,
it also like another form of fetishization? Do you know what I mean? Like it's you can't divorce it from the context. You can't divorce it from the racism and all of that, because there is like this fascination because it feels so exotic, partly because there were generations of people who had no influence because their neighbors were yanked out of their homes and taken somewhere far away. And so it's like, you can't divorce all of these systems together. And so I do appreciate a cultural appreciation for sure. But I think it is important to, not be lazy. Like, like you've said many times, like really do the due diligence and not be lazy in your appreciation. Really do it in a meaningful way where you're honoring the people themselves and really asking yourself, what does my presence necessitate to demonstrate my love for these people? And sometimes that means removing yourself from the equation. And and I think that can be very difficult, but it's very important. Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I completely agree with you. We don't live in a post-racial society. So that's why, because I get a lot of questions. Why is this an issue? Blah, blah, blah. because we do live in a in a society where there is institutionalized racism, and people are still getting denied opportunities because they look a certain way or come from a certain background. Whereas on other people of a different skin tone, they're celebrated. So it's like what I say to people. I don't hold all the answers, you know. I'm not like, okay, what's the best way to culturally appreciate? Okay, let's get into it. But, you know, Google is free, or you can, as you said, take a step back, reflect, and think about the best way to move forward with whatever you're talking about or whatever you're thinking about appropriating or appreciating, you know?
Yes.
But, yeah, it's just this thing also with, because I talk about these subjects suddenly. I mean, I love the people that follow me, and I appreciate every single one of them. But there are some people that fall on my videos and then believe that I speak for all Black people or all African people. And so sometimes it is hard because I may feel a certain way. Like, you know, just as I said earlier, I don't care if a white person who doesn't hold a lot of influence over society and its trends, if they wear braids, okay, do you, boo boo. However, another Black person may not feel the same way, or another person of color may not feel the same way. And what I also find lazy is, for example, people saying, oh, but this person said it was okay, so I'll do it. Whereas, no, you got to take a look at the whole picture, you know?
Right.
It's like with this situation that's happening with Jessie Nelson and Nicki Minaj. Nicki Minaj doesn't believe that Jessie Nelson is blackfishing. However, that's one person. That's one Black woman saying that. And you also have to look at all the other Black people who may disagree with her, or Black women that may disagree with her. And so it is work, you know, taking all of those different opinions together, blending them in and thinking, okay, what's my best move going forward? But it has to be done, you know? If I can make short-minute videos about the subjects, I mean, you can look them up, you can do the work, you can, I don't know, expand your worldview, get more friends of color. I don't know, you know?
But don't run up to him and say, hey, I have a vacancy in my friend pool, and I'm really looking for a POC to fill it.
Looking for some color.
We want some spicy energy in here. So, like,
you're looking a little pale. Do you tan more in the summer?
Oh my God. And that is one of the things that I just so love about your content is I feel like it is a really it's a tricky space to be able to create micro content and do it in a way that is entertaining, that is educational, that because all of these algorithms are designed to reward that. So if you're making the best content out there that is just so rich and wonderful, but it's not hitting all the marks and the algorithm doesn't like it, literally nobody will see it. You do a really wonderful job of presenting information, I think, in a way that is very palatable and engaging. And I would imagine that there are a lot of people that are newly exposed to these types of conversations through your work. But it also feels like that is, to your point, like there's a responsibility there that could be a bit scary.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much. And second of all, you're completely right. It can be a little scary because sometimes, you know, I started this whole thing off just wanting to talk about things that I personally find interesting or things that bother me. And sometimes I do feel a responsibility to sort of, or this responsibility is put on me to be a mouthpiece for people of color, whereas it's not the case. I'm just one person alone in her room talking to a camera, talking about things that I find interesting, you know? But it has been amazing because I've started learning more things about, you know, my culture as well, or my history. And that's what I love about these short videos, because even though I do the work, I do put in the time, I do the research, it's fun learning all those things because I would have not done it otherwise. You know, I mean, when I finish working, if it wasn't for TikTok, I wouldn't want to just sit down and research stuff instead of watching, you know, I don't know, Bob's Burgers. But So it's given me this opportunity, or it's become a way for me to discover more things about my culture and my history as well. And so that's what I really like. And I think that's why I keep on doing it and I keep on putting those videos out. And I'm glad that people resonate with them, because they are, each and every single one of them are topics that are close to my heart, because otherwise I wouldn't be making videos on them, you know?
Absolutely. I love that. Okay, are you ready for the G speed round?
Okay.
Only rule
Do
is
it.
you can't overthink it. It's just what comes to your mind. Totally underrated dance move.
Oh my gosh, what? Okay, now I'm very nervous. Ndombolo, which is a dance move from Congo, from Keen specifically. If ever you want to know what I'm talking about, I can't believe I'm about to plug this. And look at a singer called Kofi Olomide, Loi, and then you'll see. It's African dance move, Ndombolo. Perfect. Love it. Got it. Oh, did I nail that question? I felt like I was rambling.
We'll have to link that in the show notes, because I'm like, I don't know how to spell.
Yeah, I just said a bunch of words. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. All right. If you could magically instill the knowledge of one historical figure into the brains of everyone on Earth, who would that be?
The Black Pharaohs of Sudan, of the Kush Empire.
Okay. So what is, when you are like feeling super dorky, like you are alone, nobody's watching, what is that thing that we would catch you doing that if you knew that we were catching you, you would be like low-key embarrassed?
I want to say watching anime, but not even the cool kind of anime like Attack on Titan, but something really lovey-dovey like Maid Sama, which is just high school love stories. So I absolutely love that. That is my jam. Yeah.
That's so cute and so like heartwarming. Okay.
Oh my gosh, I love it so much.
What is a failure that turned out to be a gift?
Ooh, okay. So I launched an online platform centered around African art, African artists, and the history behind the art, and just generally the history of the villages, of different villages in Africa. It didn't pan out because it's very difficult actually to export African art outside of the continent if you don't have the appropriate funds. However, within that, I discovered that I actually love designing on the web. And so that led to another passion, and that's what I do now. So, yeah.
Yay!
I'm not going to lie. I mean, it was horrifying at the moment, at the time. I bawled my eyes out. I was like, I've let so many people down. But hopefully one day with the appropriate funds, we'll get that ball rolling again.
That makes me happy. I think particularly because so many people can resonate with having the goal, the dream, the vision, having to let go of that. And in so doing, realizing you discovered this other thing, there's no way you would have discovered otherwise. And I think so many people have that as a kernel to their stories. Absolutely. Okay. What is, I'm trying to think if this will work. Let's just try it.
Okay.
Like, who was your tweenage crush? But it has to be somebody from like popular culture that we might know.
I guess I'm going to have to go again. It's an anime, and it's Inuyasha, who was a half human, half demon, absolute beautiful drawing of a man / demon. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. It was just a hot bod, hot claws, and yeah, gobble that up.
All right.
Okay. But if we're going more generally, just so that, okay, I will have to, what's it called in English? One Tree Hill, I think. One Tree Hill, is that possible? Yes, One Tree Hill.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And oh my gosh, what's that actor's name? Chad Michael Murray?
Yeah, there's like a blonde one, right? Chad Michael. Yeah, I think that's him. And then what was the name of the anime person?
Inuyasha.
Okay, perfect. We'll like link that.
Oh my gosh, just thinking about it.
Okay.
Gotta watch me some Inuyasha tonight.
Okay, this is another one that like may or may not work, but we're gonna try it anyways. what is a mantra that you are really resonating with right now?
Work smarter, not harder.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do you say it to yourself in English?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I read it in English and I forget where I heard it. I forget where I read it. All I know is that it stuck with me throughout the years. And just recently, I've started thinking about it again because that is a very big issue of mine, especially now what with the whole TikTok thing. And I'd perhaps like to get a YouTube channel going. And so just having all these different things, working, TikTok and this and that, it's a lot. I keep telling myself I have to find a way to make all of that work, not by necessarily tiring myself out, but by working in a way that will blend all of those things together. And yeah.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, I was wondering if there was like a French version that sounded sexier of that phrase. Because everything sounds sexier in French. Like that's just facts, literally facts.
Oh, I wish. No, it doesn't. It doesn't really translate well to French, actually.
Yeah.
I'll think about it.
So, well, just as a side note, I fully think that you should go ham on YouTube because the searchability factor, like if somebody's searching Bo Derek braids and your video comes up, like that would be so transformational. You know what I mean? Like I love TikTok, but just, keeping the videos 5 to 7 minutes, I feel like that would just be amazing. Okay, so lastly, what does it mean to be a bold bitch?
For me, it's forging your path without fear, be it fear of failure from yourself or fear of the look of others, and just moving on up your way and just going on up your way. I don't know.
I love that.
It's the first thing that came to mind because that's something that I have to tell myself nowadays and continuously. And so, I guess I wanted a more in-depth response, but
yeah, no, I love it. Not comparing yourself and just doing it. Well, can I say, Tanaïssa, you are like so fucking phenomenal. I also just want to commend you because when I think about doing a whole podcast in another language, I would just be like thinking about doing it in Spanish would just like give me beads of sweat. And you're just like so wonderful and expressive, and just so much of your energy has come through in such an amazing way. And I'm just so grateful that you said yes. I'm also just so in love with the way that you show up and really sharing who you are and sharing these stories that mean so much to you. And in doing that, allow that sort of resonance to really sit with people who would have no idea about some of these amazing traditions and amazing humans. So yeah, you're just pretty much fucking amazing.
Thank you so much for having me. This has honestly been a blast. I love you. I love this podcast. It's been a treat. I'm not going to lie. I was super nervous, sweating beads. I was just talking to my dog, prepping the whole thing. And no, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks.
Yay. Okay. Lastly, how can people, because obviously they're obsessed in the best way possible, how can they follow you? Where can they find you? All of that good stuff.
Well, you can find me on TikTok and Instagram at Tanaïssa.d. So TANITA.DEE. I hope I said that right.
Yeah.
And just catch me on those socials talking about different things like Blackfishing, a little thing called colorism. And
no big deal.
No big deal, little things. And on Instagram, just my face. Yeah.
Yes. And I know everybody's going to go and follow you because I think what I love about your content too is that these are heavy topics, but in watching your content, I don't feel heavy. And I think that there is this kind of tendency sometimes where it almost ends up like re-traumatizing and engaging in some of this conversation, and the way that you present things and just you showing up as who you are just puts me in this place of being able to receive and enjoy and learn. And I think that is a skill and an art that is pretty rare. And I just love you for that. So I know all the bold bitches out there, all the mafiosas are going to come, and we're just going to, take over the TikTok comment section.
Thank you so much.
I just loved that conversation so much. I remember when we recorded, I was having kind of a rough day. After that conversation, there's just some that help you. You just end up walking lighter. Like there's just, you have energy that floods you, and you just feel like you're moving through the world with a different charge that's just exciting and wonderful. And that's exactly how I left this conversation. I am so, so, so grateful to Tanaïssa for just being the fabulous human that she is. And so, so, so good. Now for you, my beautiful, wonderful, fabulous, magnetic, bold bitch, I am just like sending as much energy as possible your way for the same, well, let's just say not the same thing that I'm experiencing by any stretch of the imagination. Would not be wishing that for you. But what I do wish for you is the process that I am going through of figuring out your own internal balance of navigating, feeling, being present, but also being empowered, and really experiencing what is happening from a place of trust and love, which can be so fucking hard to do, which is why I'm just going to send you all of that juicy, fabulous, wonderful energy so you can go through this week doing that. You are beautiful. You are fabulous. You are amazing. And I will see you next week. Bye. If you love this episode and the show, be sure to rate and review on iTunes and share it out in the world with a friend, family, frenemy, whatever feels good. You can follow us on Instagram at The Bold Bitch Podcast, and we're waiting for you at theboldbitch.com/mafia. See you next week.